bonds of brothers. The bustling courtyard of Ericvale Castle buzzed with activity. Hooves and boots beat muddy trenches in the sodden streets. Sir Cedric, a skilled knight, walked guiding his younger brother Augie. The two passed a wagon whose wheel was sunken into the soggy path. Augie shouted some unknown words and squealed at the men and horses as they tried to pull it out. Cedric urged his brother along, having no interest in helping in this downpour. Augie was actually Cedric's older brother, but a disorder of the brain made him still act as a child sometimes. Other traits Augie was known for included a stutter, a clubbed left foot, and unending clumsiness, which often drew unwanted attention. Augie, I need to discuss something with the garrison's commander before we return home. Wait here and stay out of trouble. A voice called from a nearby building. Cedric nodded and turned to Augie. Augie, I'll be back soon, Cedric said, patting his brother's shoulder before heading inside. Left alone, Augie stood around, but the straw roof's edge he was taking cover under began to soak through and drip on his head. This irritated Augie, so he searched for somewhere dry nearby, trying his very best to avoid causing any trouble. He walked into an inn. As Augie entered, he noticed the loud commotion of men and women drinking and blabbering. Augie stood around, dripping near the entrance for a minute, then decided to try and find a quiet corner in the back of the inn. On his way to the secluded corner, he stumbled into a highborn man named Edwin and his friend Jamie, causing them to spill their drinks. "What the hell?" Edwin shouted, his face turning red with anger. Jamie glared at Augie, who stuttered apologies, but the drunk man didn't want to hear it. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." Edwin grabbed a fistful of Augie's tunic as he squealed, "Hey, buffoon, watch it. You owe us some fresh drinks." Spittle flecked Augie's face as the drunk man spoke. I don't have any." Edwin's patience was wearing thin, still gripping a fistful of Augie's wet tunic. "What the hell is he saying? Jamie, can you understand him?" "Can't say I do. He speaks some form of idiot, it seems." Augie shrieked at the word. While he didn't know much, he did not like being called an idiot. "Sorry, sir," he managed to say coherently enough. "Oh, there we go," said Edwin. "But that's not going to pay for our ale, is it? Why don't we just waste this good stew while we're at it?" Edwin reached down, picking up his wooden bowl hot with the inn's stew. "Yeah, let's just waste it all," he said, then opened Augie's trousers and poured the stew down the front. Augie lost it. The heat and sudden sensory overload made him go into a childlike panic, jumping back on his clubbed foot, the other wailing wildly as it kicked the man named Jamie in the balls. Then, on his way to the floor, trying to grasp at a chair or pole to steady himself, he accidentally clawed the other man's face. Edwin jerked away as Augie's unkempt nails slashed his cheek. "That bastard!" Edwin roared as his friend rolled on the floor in pain. "I ought to kill you, idiot! You sick-headed oaf!" "Hey!" the innkeeper yelled. "If you are going to fight, take it outside." Quickly, Edwin and his recovering friend grabbed Augie and threw him face down in the rain and mud-soaked street. "You struck me, a highborn at that. Now that means by rule of law I get to take your life in a duel. Someone throw this idiot a sword," he said as he drew his. Augie was almost drowning in the mud and dirt before he finally found his footing and was able to stand. It was then that Cedric returned, hurrying through the rain to Augie's side outside the inn. "What is the meaning of this?" he yelled. A crowd began to gather along the edges of the covered buildings, watching the commotion with interest. Edwin's eyes narrowed. "By law, I challenge this here man in a duel to the death." Cedric stepped protectively beside the Augie. "He's not well in the head. I'm sure it must have been an accident." "Your brother assaulted us," Edwin sneered. "By highborn law, I can declare that he must face me in a duel to the death." Cedric was well aware of the law. He had been challenged in many others before. He knew Augie stood no chance against Edwin. "If it's a duel you want, then let it be a fair fight. According to the same law, the challenge has the option to make it a 2v2 duel. I will fight alongside my brother against you and your friend if you wish it." Edwin's arrogance blinded him. "Agreed. Whatever it takes to end that miserable oaf," he said, confident in his and Jamie's skills. "Then it is settled. The duel will be 3 days from today." Back home, Cedric began training Augie, focusing on basic defense and strategy. Augie struggled, but was determined. Unfortunately, his clubbed foot and distracted mind made things difficult. Well, just about the only thing Augie had going for him was his size and strength. That too was hard for him to use properly. I can't do this, Cedric," Augie said, fear evident in his voice. "You can, Augie. If you can keep one distracted long enough, I can come and protect you," Cedric reassured him. Under Cedric's guidance, Augie learned how to wield and defend, but not much more. The night before the duel, Cedric tried his best to train Augie one last time, but there simply wasn't enough time for Augie to learn any more. So instead, they shared a heartfelt conversation as Augie fell asleep next to Cedric and their mother, who was patting his hair to comfort him. The next morning, the field was filled with common folk spectators. Edwin and Jamie stood confidently at the center, sneering at Cedric and Augie as they approached. The duel began as a man on horseback blew his trumpet. Cedric yelled out to Augie, "Stay near me!" Then he skillfully engaged Edwin. Augie clumsily followed as Jamie came at him seeking revenge, but Cedric sent a wavering slash, nearly taking the man's head off, as he disengaged Edwin only for a moment, though. In his nervousness, Augie accidentally tripped, then stood and swung as Jamie fainted, coming closer. Jamie laughed as he threw a powerful slash that sent shocks through Augie's sword, almost dropping it as he fell to a knee. A loud scream came from Edwin. "Help, Jamie!" he cried. Cedric had sent a piercing slash through Edwin's armored left arm, then was kicked back, barely able to catch his balance. Now the two men teamed up on Cedric, shifting the odds in their favor. Cedric fought hard while his brother Augie, terrified, knelt in immobilizing fear. Eventually, the highborn men's blades found glancing and injuring blows through the gaps in Cedric's armor. His blood began to run from multiple cuts. The crowd roared in appreciation while one onlooker threw a tomato that splattered across Augie's head. The man screeched, eyes wide, almost erupting from his face. Tears swelled and ran as he rose. That's when Augie let out a charge, sword held like a spear in his hand. Finally, batting away Cedric's sword, Edwin and Jamie moved in for the kill. So invested in trying to finish Cedric off, the highborn man Jamie didn't hear Augie until he was right behind him. Twirling, letting out a wild slash, His sword flat smashed hard, crushing the side of Augie's temple. But at the same moment, Augie's sword went through the man's throat. Both men collapsed to the floor as Jamie's sword flew, hitting the ground in front of Cedric. In the moment of shock, Edwin's eyes grew large as his friend's blood spurted out in front of him. Cedric took this moment to pick up the disarmed sword. At the same moment, enraged, Edwin stabbed into the fallen Augie's thigh, twisting as he squirmed in concussed pain. In a flash, Cedric was back and flicked away Edwin's sword, pointing the tip to his throat. Edwin, knowing it was lost, called out to yield. The crowd was in shock, but only for a moment, then roared in satisfaction. Cedric then rushed to his brother Augie, who was gravely injured. Bending down, Cedric held Augie's head in his lap as he called out for help. Tears began to roll from the grizzled knight's cheek, falling onto his brother's swollen head. Augie, with his last breath, whispered, "Beep, beep, 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 beep. Brother." Augie died in Cedric's arms. The crowd, moved by the brothers' bond and bravery, stood in solemn silence. The highborn Edwin, witnessing the scene, slunk away in shame. Cedric laid Augie to rest in a peaceful meadow near their home the next evening.